Okay, hi. So I got a pretty cool thing I've been working on for I don't know the past couple weeks, I'd say actually. Um, so before I, well, it says it in the title. But before I introduce what it is, I worked on this project before, a different version of this project before. Let me just adjust my mic here. That might be a little loud, but whatever. Um, I worked on this project before, and I really wanted to make it like a huge project, right? I wanted it to be one of those things where you like could hear about it just because of how like great it is. I know that sounds pretty egotistical, but like I really wanted to put my heart and soul into this project. And what I was planning to do with that project, it was called Easy Game Maker, or just Easy Game Maker, not one, but just Easy Game Maker. It's up, it's shared, but I didn't finish it. It's kind of unfinished, so it's a little, it's not buggy, but it's just kind of lacking in a few places. What that was supposed to do was allow you, someone who has literally no experience whatsoever with coding, or at least with Scratch coding, and you could just piece together these simple blocks that were in here like Legos, and it should just work, right? That was the goal. Now, obviously, that's a little bit tricky to do because you need it to know at least like what these are and kind of how they work, and you put inputs in these little white spaces and all that kind of stuff. And with that one, I didn't label the functions or any of the variables. I didn't label them well at all. Like this one, though, I have everything kind of labeled and organized based on what they do. And so I'm not done with this project. I'm probably like 20-30% of the way done with it. But I did want to make this video because this, at least where I'm at right now, this spot or this project is functioning how it should be. Like it's working, it's nice. You could go off and make a game with what it's at right now and it will work just fine. It just won't have things like the ability to add sound effects when you hit something or when you're walking in a game. It doesn't have particle effects, which I want to add. And this specific Easy Game Maker does not have multiplayer installed yet. I might not ever install it. I did just build a multiplayer system that handles like variables over the clouds. It uses all like 9 of the clouds to store player data, and then it uses the last cloud because you have a total of 10 clouds available. It uses the last cloud to say who's online. So it works very well. It works exactly how it should be, but it is way too slow. Specifically because Scratch sends data very slowly, and it's also based on your internet. So when you have players, and I know I haven't shown anything yet, so I'm just talking and it's just blank screen basically. But when you have these players, so imagine if we do this here. Imagine you had a player and another player. Here's you, right? And you're walking around the place and it's smooth, like it's very nice and smooth and stuff. But you'll see this player kind of jolt around really laggily, like like this. It'd be really laggy. Every like 3 seconds it'll update, and that's incredibly slow and that's not fun. But it still worked, right? And or yeah, so I was gonna mention the first iteration that I made of that, which was even worse. But yeah, it's not what's the word, useful. It doesn't feel comfortable when you're playing it. So I might try to figure out another way to do multiplayer. But I swear I've seen like Agario multiplayer games and stuff that the characters move very smoothly. So I don't know how to really change that. The only other way I would to know how to fix something like that where the lag is happening is to, instead of sending player position data over the cloud, it would be sending player velocity data, and then you would just update the velocity data, and that means that the players will move at the velocity that they should be moving for that duration of time. The only problem with that is that then they can get desynced. A player might be like a little bit to the right where they really are on their side, and that's not good. And eventually they can get really desynced. Then you might be able to send both the player data and the user and the player velocities together, and then like use a combination of the two. But then you're sending a lot of data, and at that point you're sending enough where it's even slower than the 3 seconds. It's now like 4, 5, sometimes 6 seconds of delay. So yeah, so it's not worth it. So let me get into this. And after I finish this whole project, I will be making another like tutorial demo type thing where it's super nice, well edited. Things will be segmented out. There'll be like intros to each piece of the project. But for now, I just kind of want to make a video like as an update sort of video, and it will actually help me remember to organize the final video, because I've kind of already done it once. It will be fresh in my head. So what I have right now, okay, I'm not sure if you can notice a cut there, but I had a long like hour thing I had to do, and then I also noticed that the fan was on this whole time, so it might have been making a lot of fan noise in the background. Not entirely sure where I was, but I think I was just about to introduce the pieces of it. Oh, I was gonna like start the thing. Okay, so here's like a little thing, and I know it doesn't make sense what's going on, but if I play this, you can see there is a physics engine working. There's like a platform here. There's an object here. It has a skin, and this one has a skin, and there's animation going on. The reason there's no line around this one, because there's two objects here. The reason is because it's like a transparent object. That is useful if you want to have things in the background that you don't interact with, but you want it to show, or if you want something that is in the foreground, like if you're doing a top-down thing, or yeah, like this, like not top-down, platformer. You might want to have like grass here, right? You have like grass down here, and then there's like bushes in front and in the background, and so it looks like you're going through like the jungle. So you have these objects that are in the front or in the back that you don't interact with, but they are still in the physics engine in a way. Actually, they're not in the physics engine, but they are considered in the game engine. So what I mean by that is that let me go down to the list section. In here, I have a lot of lists, but the primary ones that you'll be using with this project, well, you don't actually use the list at all, but you use these functions. Actually, sorry, it's these functions up here, where they upload and download information into all of these, but it's mainly these three so far. So what we have is, we'll first start with the game objects. I'll hide all this. Actually, I can't. Let me. So each game object it'll have. So this is just a way of the first index of the game object is just a way to categorize the data. So you can see all of this is the data for item 1, and then if you go down, you see it ends item 1 here with a slash, and then item 2 starts, or object 2. So what we have is the name of the object. So this one is called player. You can see that created right here. So it says game, add object, and then the name. Then it says the size. So it's weird that it shows at a different spot here. So like you see that says player, then this thing, then this thing, then this thing, then the size is here, but it stores it as the first thing here. That's just a little weird, but you don't have to worry about that at all. And I might be adding something like this where see how it says name. I might say like add object name, and then the name variable, and then custom name as a label, and then the custom name variable, so that when you're looking at this, it's a little easier to understand. But what that means is that these functions are going to be a lot longer, and it might take up more space. It might be a little more uncomfortable, but so you can just right click, edit, and then see what each one does. So I'll go through this. In here, what is stored is the size of the object. So when you create a costume, like if we go down here, you can see this costume is incredibly small, and the object would be put onto the screen pretty small. So if you want that to be changed, you just change that input. So we go back here, you can see if I have 2 here, let's actually close this off. Oh gosh, let me go to this. If I put something like 1, so it was just normal, this is the size of that object in the screen, right? It's very small. Also, it makes no sense that I have a floating island as like a movable player thing. It's just what I designed for a quick moment, and then I just decided to put it as the player object. So if I make this, 5, it's gonna be a lot bigger, and you can see that oh wait, hold up, I put the wrong thing as 5. This was false, so it doesn't even show up. Actually, did that even change? I don't know, whatever. It's this, that should be 5. There we go. So now it's a lot bigger, and you can see that the physics engine also updates its size. So before, actually, I'll say one thing. These red lines and these blue lines, all these lines is a part of this. It shows down here the physics engine debug renderer, or render. This is just to see those lines when you have no object. It's just a debug thing. You don't need to show it. If you have a game where you have you wanted this like aesthetic of boxes, right? Then you can just do something like this, and now you have the game like this, right? So you just had like, this is an aesthetic you might want to have, but for now I'm just gonna leave both of them just to show both of them. So let's go back up here. So you can see the thing updates. I want to put this back to 2, and we'll go through this thing, and then I'll go through the actual function block. So we got the player name, we got the size of the object, and then we have costume components. So you can add a costume component here, and then a physics component here. The actual like number 4 and number 9 in this list, like this has no functionality whatsoever. It's just so when you're looking at this, you can see that, okay, so these things are part of the costume component, and these are the part of the physics component. There's nothing referring to these spots at all. Like, it's just there just for easy to look at, I guess. Then the next part is this part, MFI. That is right here. So one of the blocks that I have is to actually get the data from your costume. Now, for most most projects, what you'll do is you'll create a costume, and if you wanted it to show and also be the size of the physics engine, like if you create your own physics engine where it had interacting parts and stuff, then you would want to know the width and the height of the object. So then you would go in yourself and you would say, okay, well, this is an 18 by 31 pixel width and height dimensional thing. And you have to get it all yourself. Well, the get costume data is very easy to work with. It does it all for you. So we'll go in here first and we'll see this. It says get costume data, and it says the costume you want to get, the from, the to, the start frame are all based on the animation part of the costume. And then the name is what you use later to reference it easier, right? So the costume name is Mini Floating Island, and I just said MFI for Mini Floating Island. And if you look in here, you can see Mini Floating Island. The text here, if I scroll over, has a Mini Floating Island 1, and you create a new one, Mini Floating Island 2. Now in Scratch, if you duplicate this, the next one's going to be Mini Floating Island 3. So it's super easy just to create a new one, and it'll add on to the component. So actually, if I did that right now, and I restarted this, watch this part right here. It's going to have, this 2 is going to go up to a 3, and then this is going to be scrolling from 1, 2, and 3. Boom, right there. And now if we look at the animation, I just need to go back here. Loading back the code thing is pretty laggy because it takes forever. Like you see, if I click and drag, it's like it takes forever because there's so much in here. It's really not so much, but like it's getting to that point where it's getting too much. Actually, I wanted to move this. I don't know why it went back here. So if we look now, if we look at it, you can see that the animation is like flickering. It's not doing like one frame and then the other, and it's going back in sync. It's almost like it's staying on one frame twice, and that is because 2 of the frames are identical. These 2 frames are identical. So anyway, so yeah, so that get thing, this get costume data block, we'll look at Mini Floating Island, and then it'll start at Mini Floating Island 1. If you don't specify anything in here, it's going to start at Mini Floating Island 1, and it's going to count as many times as you have Mini Floating Islands in the project. So it'll go Mini Floating Island 1, it'll check if that's an actual costume. It is, good. It'll remember that, and then it'll go to the second one, and then when it goes to the third one, if we go back here, see it, now it's only those 2 frames. When it goes to the third one, it sees that that doesn't exist. And so now it knows, okay, there's only a range from 1 to 2, and so it will save the length of that, and it will save the frame it's on. Now, I actually don't remember if I actually got this to work, but what I have here, if we go back in here, it says from, to, and start frame. So if we start the frame at 2, it will calculate the width and height from the second frame. So you can see these things are moving. Now, the dimensions is 18 by 31 and 18 by 31, so nothing changed. But if this was like 200 by 31 or 200 by 200, and this was 18 by 31, and you started it on the frame 2, then the physics object over here will be that width and height. So that's good if you want to have an object that is like let's say you have a little robot character and his arms or her arm, as a robot, it's not really gender, whatever, its arms extend out, but you don't want those arms to impact the physics engine at all. You don't want those arms to cause to get, like, if you're up against a wall, you don't want your character to be super far away from the wall because just the fingers are there. You know, it doesn't make sense, right? So you can calculate it where it's in its rest position, but let's say you didn't want to have the rest position in the animation. Well, that's where the start and end frame thing come in handy. So let me take this out. If I started at frame 2, I believe this should say just 1. Okay, it doesn't. Let's see. Let me go to the thing. So I can actually show you the actual block that is responsible for finding this data. I believe that's right here. Okay. So if we look, we can see first it sets the size to 0, and it has these variables that set. There's a lot of things basically making sure that when you don't put an actual number, it doesn't save any blanks. Like if I go here and I delete that, it doesn't save anything like that, which is a problem. So that's just all this. And then right down here, this is where it finds, actually, let's see. Yeah, this right here, this block is where it finds how many frames there is in the animation. So what I have here, if I go in here, there's a check if costume exists costume. This is blank. It has, this can be anything. It doesn't really matter. But what it does is it switches it to that block, or it switches it to that costume right here first, and then it switches it to the costume that it should be going to. So it'd be Mini Floating Island 1, and then it checks. It says if this costume is the check if costume exists still, which means that it never switched to this one because that didn't exist. So it would be like if Mini Floating Island 1 never existed, then it would be like, okay, so it doesn't exist, we should end it here, and it would show that it has 0 frames in the animation, or in other words, it just doesn't exist at all, which means you put a typo or something. Let's say you had we have 2 Mini Floating Island frames of the animation. When it gets to the third one, it will go to Mini Floating Island joined with the counter it's on, which would be frame 3. And because that doesn't exist, it would stay on costume if costume, or check if costume exists. Costume. And then it would stop, and then it would go back one because it jumps one. Anyway. And so here's where the start frame thing is. Why does not, oh no, okay, actually no. I'm being stupid. It's the from part that we're looking at. So when I set the from to 1, where is it? When I set it, so I set it to 2. Let's see, what if I set it to 1? What does that do? Okay, that just breaks everything. Oh, there's something that's interesting. Okay, I need to like fix it. Something's definitely not working. Okay, now I broke something completely. What is this? What did I do? Oh, yeah, duh. I forgot to connect these back together. Well, actually, before I do that, I could just show how this works. What this does is if I just click this, you can see if I click that and I actually, oh, it won't do that. It won't work there. Hold on. Let me, sorry, I'm getting all over the place. I'll just read it off and show you what it does, like with words, not with the visuals. It erases everything on the canvas. It sets the pen to this color, and then it draws like a line, but the line is so thick that it covers half of the board in red and the other half in white, right down the middle. Then it puts the character right in the center, and it moves the character to the right until it's not touching the red, right? So that means that it pushes it over all the way to one side. And now when you are at one side, you can do the exact opposite where it moves it over to the left until it's not touching the white side, and that basically scanned the width of the object, and then you can record how many times it has moved into this data right here, in this variable right here, and then it always does one more because of the way Scratch handles it or something, I don't know. So I just subtract 1 from that, and there might be a little bit of error sometimes, especially using vector objects, but the error is so minimal that when you have the physics and physics box around the thing, it doesn't look any different. It's maybe off by a pixel or 2, and then it does the same thing for the height, and then it basically scans those 2 things and then adds it to the list that stores that data. You can come right here and you can see right here, stored that data, which is weird. Why is that? Oh, there we go. So there's an automatic default one that says a no costume that stores in there. That's this one. So if it didn't have a costume, if something went wrong, it should go to this. and then you'll just see a missing texture. It's kind of like Minecraft, so it's just good to know, like you play the game, when you're making your game and you see that missing texture, it means something went wrong, so you got to go fix it. So it's just an indicator to fix it. Then the second one here for us is the mini floating island. There's the name, there's the reference tag, and then its width, its height, how long the animation is, and then the starting frame, I believe. Right? Hold on. Yeah, starting frame. So when I put the 2 up there in the top thing, right here, it should have started the animation on 2, and then check how far it goes until it's not working anymore, and then it should have recorded that, and it should always just have the second frame. But that didn't happen. I don't know if that made sense. So I will have to bug fix that, and I don't know if I can do that right now. So I'll do that later. So when you use the project, it will work how you think it should. But yeah, so that's the point. So that's the costume part, right? The second part is down here, the physics component. Now this is interesting. The physics component has a true or false. This also has a true or false, but that doesn't really matter. But this true or false right here says if the physics is connected or not, like if it actually has a physics object. This one right here, this block down here, would not have a physics object. Let me actually go down to show it. So obviously you can go through it, right? So it doesn't have a physics object, but it still needs to have data there, right? So if I go down to it, I think the one that has false, true, false, yeah, right here. So this ground object is, so it's 5 times bigger and has a costume of a platform, and it's doesn't have any animation, so it's a length of 1 and it's on frame 1, or that gotta be that. Yeah, it is that, but I don't know why I have it stored here. Oh no, yeah, I'm sorry. Totally misunderstood my own code here for a second. Then here we go. Physics component is false. So this one has no physics component. It has no index for the physics engine, which is right here. So these are the physics objects. So up here we look at this one. It says 1. So this object, which is the player, I believe. Yeah, the player's data is at 1 right here. Then if you go down to this bottom one, you can see that it says 2. So it's at 2 times 8. So it's here's 1, and then so that physics component is right here at 8 or at 9. So it's 2 times 1 plus 1. So that's how you store it. So it just works in the background. You don't have to worry about that. And then the next 2 spots are the X and Y location. I wanted to have the X and Y location here in the physics engine, but I bring it out here to the game objects because for all the objects that don't have a physics engine component, they still need to have an X and Y location, right? And that's where it's stored. It's stored in the game object. So for objects with a physics component, they have a game X and Y and a physics engine X and Y location, and they're linked. But the ones who don't have a physics engine, they just have the game objects property of an X and Y, and you can move that around when you want to. There's a block for that. I believe I can find that right here. If I go to objects and then I can say set, we can set the second object that's created. So it should be this one, unless that's the third. No, it's the second. I can set the let's see, X, Y, and size. So I can set the size to something like 1. You see it got smaller, so I can put that back to 5. I can set the spot to be like 50 over, so we'll move it over and then move it up 100. So you can see it. So it works fine. And then the change is like I can do 2 and I can do 1 and 1, and that won't change. And you can see it's moving by 1, so it changes it. So it's like this block, the change by block. And then the last one here was the multiply. So you can just multiply what it is right now if you want to. Anyway, and then so you can't do that with the blocks that have a physics engine, because this spot in the physics engine is being, or in the game objects spot, the game objects list is being updated by the physics engine. So you have to change the location it's at in the physics engine, and that is down here in the physics functions. There is one right here, block data. You could change, you could set, and you can multiply. So if we go here, let's actually change. Let's go to, I believe this is index. So the first object, which is the player's object, and I'm going to change the X location. So 1, and then it was width, height, and then x location. I'm going to change it by 5, and you'll see that the thing moves over by 5. If I changed it by like 10 up, you see it kind of jumps up, and it just teleports there, right? Now there's other things here. You can change the velocity and acceleration. So now if I change the acceleration by 50, you can see it kind of jumps up, and that's a lot more realistic. That's just like pressing up here. I have the exact same script running to jump up to the left more, up here more, right? Where is it? It's this one right here, but it's being controlled by this right here. Take control of an object, and it's this script right here that's running it. So I'll get into that in a second. This is definitely going to be a long video, but don't worry. When I do make the tutorial demo video, I'm going to make that as short as possible, as nice as possible. I want to actually put a lot of effort into it, especially because the video I just had recently on Scratch like blew up in my opinion, or for my channel. It's like at 700 views now, which is insane, especially for my channel, and I've gained I think like 6 subscribers from it. So I know if I'm definitely not some famous million subscriber thing, but for me that means a lot. That's honestly so awesome. So anyway, so you can see that works. So that's the game object. Let's actually go into the physics objects at this point, which I'm going to close off the game objects, and then we go to the physics objects. So now if you look here, there is a lot of list for the physics objects, and because there's a lot of data to work with here. And I'm actually not going to show the list themselves off, but I will talk about 1 or 2 of them. But if we look right here, this first one, this is storing the width, the height, the x, y locations, the x and y velocities, and the x and y accelerations for every object right here. You can see that here, and there is 2 objects in here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I missing something? Oh, and then there's a 0 here. So there should be 16 numbers here. Actually, I could just do this. I could prove that by just doing length of and objects, and it should be 16. Yeah, there you go. So there's 2 objects, each with 8 data points. So that is what is used in the physics block, or the collision block, which is somewhere down here. I think it's all the way at the bottom. Yeah, that's right here. So this big block right here, look how slow it is to move it around. This giant block is what handles all the physics for each block in relation to every other block. And to tell it what to do is right here, where each block right here is looking at every other block. And then I do that by running through another script that does this. Oh gosh, does this for all of it. So anyway, the next list is the next one that's notable. It's not this one, but it's this one, the properties. This stores the mass of an object, the movability of the object, the tag it has, a few other things. So these first 6 numbers are the temporary XY for location, or so for position, velocity, and acceleration, which means that I use this to update the block's positions, velocities, and accelerations without actually updating the actual numbers yet, because if you have 2 blocks colliding, remember you have to go through each block systematically. So you have to go through one at a time. You can't do everything. You can't update all blocks all at the same time. That's not how a computer works. You have to do it one by one. And so when you have 2 blocks colliding, let's say, I can actually visualize this. If you have this block, and pretend these are like objects in the physics engine, right? I can zoom in here. And you have another block, and they're colliding like this. Well, if you're going through each block, let's say this is block 1, this is block 2, right? And you have to do block 1 first because it's in the list, it's in the order of the list. So you say, okay, well, I'm intersecting this block this much in the X location and this much in the Y location. And I could see that the X overlap, or the Y overlap, is greater than the X overlap, so I must move in the X direction. That's how the physics engine works. And it will move it, and it will go right there, right on the edge. Well, now it goes to the second block, and it says, oh, I'm not intersecting. So what happens is when these 2 blocks are moving towards each other, all of a sudden one moves out the way, the other never moves, and it looks weird. That's not how physics works. They should bump off each other. So instead, I record what the movement should have been. I update this thing, the temporary data. Then this one looks at the existing data and moves accordingly. So they both move accordingly. And then you half that distance if they're both movable. So they kind of move like this, and then it works good. If one is not movable, if it's like if we look down here, we can see that this block is not movable. So I know you can't see the player, but right now we're not pushing this block down any bit. So when it is immovable, it won't do it by half. It will go in. They will both move away from each other, but this one will not actually do that update, and this one will do it not half of the distance. It will move a full distance away, and it will just be perfect. So they'll like it just works out. It's hard to explain, but it just works out in how it should. And that's all stored here. So we have the movability right here. It says true. And then here's the tag number. The tag is important. So let's go and look at what the tag does. And we can see there's a, let me close these lists. There's a list for tags right here. There's the tags. And if we look, actually, well, before I do tags, let me talk about sides. So tags and sides are very similar. They are basically storing what each block is touching for every other block. So if we do this right now, whoops, I gotta move the thing. If we do this, block 1, which is our player, we know that, has a single, it's touching a single object in the physics engine. So that's what the second number is for. And it's touching on the top side of the block. Now, if you have a character who's jumping, you can't jump indefinitely. Like if I press the jump button, I shouldn't be able to jump in the air. But before you do something like this, you can always jump in the air. So you can. So what I have is if it's on a block and it has it saying touch, which I have a nice function for that. It's like right here. It says it's in the physics engine, I believe. Yeah, right here. It says physics engine block. So if you look here, it says for the index. So we're on block 1, and we say if it has so we say block 1, if it's touching a block on the top side, this should say true. Actually, it doesn't show it, but this right now in one of the variables that exist in here, it's saying true, right? And then if I say something like, I don't know, bottom, it would say false, obviously. So it's checking all of its positions, and then because of that, let's go up to the place that I have that working in. It's to the right. Yeah, okay, right here. So we check. We say, so the player take control function, which I have up here in the main thing. So this, sorry, I should have said this is the main block, or the main forever loop, the animation loop. This does everything all the time. Right here, player take control of object, and then platformer. So I have two different versions of this. This works by if you have a platformer game. The other one works by if you have a top-down game, so there's no gravity pushing you down, so you don't jump when you're touching the top of a block. You jump or you move up all the time, like if you were on ground. You know, a top-down game, how it works, like Among Us and all that kind of stuff. That's why I actually made this, because I was planning on making an Among Us game in here, but I needed all this foundational stuff before I could do that. Anyway, so if we look, I have the player I want to, or actually, yeah, it's the player I want. So the object 1, which is also what we're calling as the player object, which is this floating island. And I check, is that floating object touching a block on the top side? And then we say right here, this one right here, I know it looks a little weird, but this variable is what you need to use. I might change this to one of the ones with like these lines in it, but all the ones with Z's in it are like the ones you never have to worry about. They're kind of like in the background, but clearly you do need to worry about this if you're making a game. So I might change this to something like physics. Actually, I'll do it right now, honestly. I can find that. It's physics engine block touching if on side. And well, I'll do it later. So anyway, if that is true, I am touching a block on the top. Then if W is pressed, and don't worry about the space for a second. If W is pressed, then jump 50. So it adds an acceleration of 50. If I do something like 10, it will also add an acceleration to the right. Hold on, do I need to reset this? Why is that? Oh, Wait. Technical difficulties. Hold on. Why is that not working? Let me put 50 and then let me do 50. It is very strange. That's very strange. Why is that happening? I'm a bit confused because this shouldn't work if this works. Oh, hold on. What's going on here? This is on the acceleration. This is very interesting. Change by, let's just change by like 1,000. It should just jolt somewhere, right? Nope, it's not doing it though. That's confusing because why should this work if it doesn't? Like, if I do 10 and 10, this should just be a tiny jump, yes? Yeah, it's a tiny jump. 50 and 50 is a bigger jump, yeah. 100. You know what? Maybe. Oh no, it's working here though. I really don't know why that's not working because it's working here, which is this function is the same as this function. Well, we're not worried about that right now. At least this part's working, and I'll fix that in a sec, or I'll look at it in a sec. That's kind of weird though. But what's happening is that if it's touching the top, and then if it's pressing W, you jump with an acceleration of 50 upwards. So negative 50 would be downwards. And then if space is pressed, obviously in Scratch you can't hold shift, but in most games, holding shift is how you sprint. That doesn't exist, so I just added holding space, which is a little bit weird. You usually press space to jump, but if you hold space, now you can move a lot faster. You can jump a lot higher. You can see how I'm moving a lot faster. So if I move side to side, this is the speed at moving side to side, and then I press space. Well, I just fell off, but if you press space, you move like a lot more force at least. Okay, and then down here, the same thing, but it has the typical if pressing A, go in the negative direction. If pressing D, go in the positive direction. And then multiply that by 5, and that's the acceleration left or right. And then down here is the same thing. Whoops, is the same thing, but for the fly version, the top-down one. Not fly, but the top-down one, which is it's just it's not the jump, it's not the if top or anything. It's just basically this thing, but for also up and down. Okay. So that's the touching sides one. The tags is very similar, except it is what you give it. So if I come up here, and we can see I can, right here, if we look at this, the third to the third left, so this is the final one, the second final one, the third final one, the third one, tag, it's all empty. When you have them empty, it adds a default. So if we look here, see how it says this is both touching default. So default is just nothing. Nothing happens. But if we add something like this block, what is this gonna do? Is it gonna fall through the ground? Okay, no, that's actually the old platform I had. So this platform has a tag called bounce. It's not moving either, so it's like it's the ground, and it's pretty long and stuff. But bounce is, you could just name it whatever. But then if you refer it to it here, if I say if block 1, actually, because we're the player block, if let's just delete that. If block 1 is touching bounce, and if that's true, then we will add a velocity of, I don't know, 20 up, or an acceleration of 20 up. And if we put this here, boom, now it's bouncing. I'm not pressing anything, it's just bouncing when we touch it. That's very useful if you have things that are sticky or bouncy. Like watch, if I do something where it's like sticky, like it's just perfect friction, what I could do is instead of set, I can, or change, I can set the object. Wait, why is this so small? Okay, so I was editing the video and then I realized exactly why what was about to be shown was not working. It was specifically because when I had this, I pulled this, or rather I pulled this block to change the positions and all that stuff of the object, but obviously the point is to change the velocities and the accelerations for the physics engine, and this is a part of the game objects, which I didn't even notice when I was recording. And the one below, so obviously this is a lot after the whole video, so a lot of things are different, but the one that was attached here, like one of them was actually the physics one. So this is what I needed. Instead of that 4 long one, it's this one. So I'll actually do what I was gonna do in the video. I don't have that block anymore. I guess I could use this block. Okay, that works. And what I was gonna do is I'll actually drop this down negative 150. And then what I could do is when touching block 1, then say for block 1, actually that might have just, I'm not entirely sure if not putting a number there would mess anything up. But if touching block 1 is bounce, so what I'll have to do is add this to bounce. And then, so now it's, oh whoops, not that. It's this one. Whoa, that got weird. And then what I'll do is if it is touching bounce, obviously we had the 50 going on. And yes, now this isn't working. Oh, set. Oh no, yeah, set. That should be fine. Whoa. Wait, what? I did not know set had all these different things. Oh yeah, because I wanted you to be able to change these things. Oh yeah. I totally forgot that this is also a thing. For a set, I guess, let me see if multiply isn't as long. Nope, I gotta go to this one, this multiply. Yeah, okay. I totally forgot I did that. In the set one, so this is for the physics engine, you could actually set the mass, the tag, and the ability for it to move, as well as all the other values. So I guess let's say if you had a sorry, I was also eating right now, so my stomach is all weird. But if you had like a game where you wanted to have a bunch of objects like explode from a center, they all moved from like a certain point and then they froze at a certain time, and then you could bounce on the, like almost like if you stop time in a way. What you could do is you could turn it from movable to immovable, and then set the x, y velocities and accelerations to 0, and then boom, now you have a block that froze at that spot. You could also save the x and y velocities to another list that you can create, and then you could restart them. So when an object is immovable, right? That's the word. When an object is immovable, when it can't move, you still can move it with its values. It'll still move, but physics won't move it. Only motion will. Like you can't move it with another block. Only you can tell it to move. So think of like Mjolnir from Thor's hammer, or like Juggernaut. Like they're supposed to be infinite mass, right? So they can still move, but nothing can move them in a way. Kind of. Anyway, so let's take this out. That's not the block we're supposed to have. Actually, it could still work, I guess, technically, but what we'll do is we'll set this to 1, and then the last number should be, yeah, the y acceleration, which would be, I just realized that, hold on, actually, well, this will work, but this is not what I was trying to do. Sorry, it's been a while since that clip that you just saw, so or the one where I was messing with the stuff and it didn't work, so I forgot what I was actually trying to do. I was trying to make it sticky, wasn't I? So I'll leave it bounce, but the point is to have it sticky. And what I'll do is I'll multiply, oh my god, I keep doing that. I'll multiply, I could even set it, to be honest. The same thing will work here, but if I multiply the velocity, so the two last numbers, so 0, 0, and then the other two last numbers, when it touches it, they should just stop. Look at that, boom. Actually, I can't move at all. So there we go. I can't move at all doing it. I think what I'm supposed to do is I have to put this above the platformer block. Now I could jump still. Yeah, I can still jump, but my velocity and everything is dead when I does it. So at least you can move afterwards. But yeah, when you're like this, it's just stuck. So yeah, so you always have to kind of think about when you're doing this stuff, or like what order these effects take place. But yeah. So that's what that does. That's what I was trying to do, I believe. And was that what? Wait, actually, was I trying to do that? I can't even remember. I also had a problem with this thing. I don't know if that was showing yet. Weird stuff in that video. Anyway, but yeah, I will say that. So you always want the physics engine physics to happen. You want that to be first. Then you want to calculate the game objects. So the physics engine does all the physics. Everything's colliding. It'll do it appropriately. Then the game objects calculate is what updates the animation. So that's why the tree is like wobbling and stuff like that. And it updates the X and Y values that you have in the game object. And you get those X and Y values from the physics engine. That's what you want to do, the physics engine first and then the calculate. Then you can do the camera link. This would just move the camera. So like if you had this after the render, then you'll have some like one frame desync. So you have the camera next, then the render objects or the debugger, whatever order you want that. But if you want the hitboxes basically to be in front of the object, you just have the debugger after the render, the first render. Then you take control. So this taking control, I think I could do that here. Yeah, or like it's not like it was gonna break or anything. It's just now it's technically doing it in synchronized. I don't know which way it was synchronized, but you get the point. And then the animation tick is just to tick the animation. So if I take that out, it won't have any animations. But if you click it, it will eventually do it. So the way it works is that for the animations, you can come in. Oh, I never mentioned the reset. Sorry, this is weird because I'm gonna cut right back to the part that I like continued on in the video after I messed up on this part, and it's gonna be weird, but just I don't know. You can figure it out. I'm tired. So here's this list part. So all these are variables that you want to reset. So you can start the game off where the camera's at 0 and Y is 0. And what if you have a game where you're not following the character and you want the camera to be 10 pixels above? Then you would set it here. You can set the zoom here. I did actually go into here at one point, I believe. I don't know if it was before this or after this. But I changed this value, so I did go here, but I didn't really mention it. Then here's the gravity. So it's at -2 right now. If I set it to 5, you'll float up. If I set it to -20, I think I'll fly right through the thing. At a certain speed, you'll fly literally right through the ground if it's too thin. So like let's say 100, and reset it. Yep, I just went right through. So that's another thing about that. So 10 would be like just really strong gravity, you can barely jump. 9.8, would be normal, but not for this. And then here's interesting things. So actually, I was talking about the animation. So here's the first thing: is the animation clock. This is gonna tick up 1 every frame. Then the animation frame rate is how slow it is. So at the 5th frame, at the 5th tick, it will reset back to 1, and it will update the animation. So that's why it's going that slow. So if I set this to something like 1, I make this bigger and I reset, this is gonna be flickering like crazy because it's updating every frame. If I set this to something like 20, then you'll see it's much slower. So this is good if you have like a slow animation. It just sets the animation speed, right? I think 5 is pretty good for most animations. And the only issue is that it's not very dynamic. So let's say you're creating a bunch of characters and then you had a character that needed to have 24 frames a second type thing, and this whole time you've kind of been working on 12 or something. Well, then you're just gonna have to double the frames for everything, every character. So like see how there's 1, 2 here? You're just gonna have to double this, and now you have to rename this to 2 and this to 3, and then double this. You're gonna rename this to 4 and so on. So you just have to manually update it. So you have to prepare in the beginning. So here's the interesting stuff though. And actually I could just put this up here. This one means you don't need to change that at all. Like don't touch that. That's just resets the counter, and you don't change that at all. But these numbers are interesting. So drag and friction are 2 numbers that you multiply to the acceleration. Well, you do drag to the velocity and friction to the acceleration that allow you to slow down. See how I'm slowing down? I'm not touching anything. Well, I fell off, but you get the point. Yeah, like you accelerate and you slow down and all that. If drag was at 1, then it's infinitely slippery, so I'm not touching anything and I'll move forever and ever and ever at that speed, never stopping. So you can really pick up speed at a certain point if you move fast. Then let's put that to 0.5. Then you can think of friction as how much. It's not really friction, but it's like imagine you punch something, like you punch a pillow. After you've punched it, and it's flying away, you aren't pushing on it anymore. So that would be like if you had it's a 0, but if you have it at 0, it's also like 0 movement at all. So I'm not even going down because gravity's not pushing me. And then 1 would be like insane strength. It just never stops. So you want that to be somewhere around 0.2. Now here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing about these numbers. The more mathematical side of you, the more mathematical people, what am I saying? The ones who are watching this that are more mathematical than the others, that's what I'm trying to say, won't understand what I'm about to say pretty intuitively. But if I were to set this to 0.9 and 0.1, let's say, these both add up to 1. So when any combination of these numbers add up to 1, and you give a force, like it's pretty slow at this spot, but if you give a force, let's say of 5 to the left, it will move after the whole smoothing part goes. So let's do this. I'll do that right now. I need to get this change. Whoa, I copied it. Change player 1, and I'm gonna give it an acceleration of -10. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the camera position, because we now know that the camera position is at the location of the object. So watch this. You see the X, it's at 125, and it's actually already showing it. These little numbers, don't worry about these like 0.03, that's just error. Just imagine this was -125. When I press -10, okay, I really thought that would change. Why is this not changing? What? The whole point was for this to change. Am I not player 1? I am player 1. Is it changing? It's just, what is happening? Oh, I'm being stupid. I'm pushing a downward force. Okay, -10. So actually, it's good here. It says 0. If I do -10, you'll see, boom, it goes up to -10. It will. There's error, but the point is it does. It's just physics error, but it's basically at the point that it should be. So that's pretty good. Like if I do 0.5 and 0.5, reset this, and then I guess it doesn't even need to settle. I just can do it now, but I'll let it settle and then click it. Still goes to 0. Is to 10, but you can see it goes there with pretty good haste. You see that, like it jolts. Now if I do 0.99 and 0.01, right, it's gonna be much more slower, but it will get there. I clicked it and it's gonna happen and it will get there. It's much slower though, much slower. And not only that, and it's not just this magical if it adds to 1. If it adds to 2, then it's gonna move not -10 but -20. So what I would do actually is I'm gonna set this to 0, so we're not gonna fall. And I know it looks like it's weird, but it's just pretend it's actually. I will say though, why is that sliding to 10 or to 100? Where does it start at? 87? I wonder why it's actually sliding up to that point. But now we're at 0 and 100. So if I want to go up 20, so it's gonna be 20 and 20 in this direction, so it'll be 20 and 120. And when I click, it's gonna slowly get there, but it will get there at that speed. Now watch, if I do 1, if I do 1 and 1, I believe it'll go to do that again, but yeah, it'll just keep going because there's nothing stopping it. So it does do it, but it doesn't stop it from happening. So actually what I'll do is 0.5, whoops, sorry, 1.5. If we do 1.5 and 0.5, it will slow down, I believe. No, it won't. And man, that is so fast. Okay, well, you get the point. In that one single step, it did go to 40 and 140, like it should. But I'm going to put that back to 0.95 and 0.2, which seems to be a pretty good number for having physics. If you use it though, it's whoa, why is it starting like that? Oh man, why is it starting like that? It's literally starting. Oh, it's starting because yeah, my keyboard sometimes gets weird. So if you play with this, you'll feel the slowness, or not slowness, but you'll feel what I'm talking about. If I do 0.8 and 0.3, then well, I should do 0.6. Then it's a little bit, actually. Let's just do 0.5 and 0.5. Forget what that does. Yeah, so it's like it's sharper, and so 0.9. I don't think it's gonna change much. There's a way you can get it so that it feels like there's only the slightest bit of sliding, but you move to the spot pretty fast. Instead of this more, you know, like look at how like slow and, you know, so slow this is. Anyway, I'm gonna cut back to the thing. Anyway, just right back. Boom. That's what this does. That's very useful. Imagine you have like a platformer where you're trying to get to a goal. You have spikes, so you can name them, instead of bounce, you name these objects spikes, and when they touch, you set the player's position back to the starting position, or you stop everything with the stop all block and they lost, or you add a point thing, because you can still add variables and you increase that. You can do a bunch of stuff with this. And then when you get to the goal, you go to the next scene and all that, right? So, or next level. The one I will say about level systems in this, the problem with the level system, sorry, oh my god, I looked at how long I've been recording for, and it wasn't changing the number, so I thought I wasn't recording this whole time. Oh my god, that scared the crap out of me. Sorry, when you try to do different levels, the issue with it is that I do not have any system to delete objects. Okay, my first Easy Game Maker project, I don't know if it had a way to delete it, but when you created a block, the last variable on the end had a variable called scene, and it would add the object to a specific scene, and when you loaded the scene, it would load only those objects, and it wouldn't have any other objects loaded, and the physics would work for only those objects. It's really nice, but I didn't add it into this one. I wasn't thinking at the time, and I've gone so far through this that I would have to redo the whole code for it to have that added. So what you would have to do if you wanted different scenes is you would have to just move the objects away from the game. Like, you have to move them so far away that you would never see them or touch them, which is upsetting, because then when you're doing the physics, you're also having to calculate for those objects. But instead, you could just turn it to false, I believe. Even if the physics object is there, you can turn it to false, and it would stop physics for that object. So I think it's okay still. But anyway, so that's the tags. And what was the last thing I was going to show? Or even if it might not have been the last thing, but I did the properties. I guess before collision is also pretty interesting. The before collision data is storing the data, like, let's say you wanted to know how hard you hit an object. Like, so let's redesign the scene. I'm going to make it very simple. I'm going to take out these. I'm going to make a player, no, I gotta add the physics object, just the physics object. So this is adding just the physics object with no what's it called, no game object properties, which I wonder, is that still works? Yeah, because yeah, it still works. So let's do this. So what we're gonna have is we're gonna have a default. It's gonna be a movable, so it's gonna be true. It's gonna be the one we move, so it'll be like, I don't know, 50 by 50 cube. It's gonna be starting at 0 and starting in the air at 150, I guess, or 100, and then it has no velocity, and then its mass is 1. We add another object. Actually, I don't know why I deleted that first one, because I wanted it to be that kind of thing. So let's just do 800 and 20. It'll be starting at 0, 0, no movable, and it's a false. Okay, and it doesn't matter about the mass because it's not movable. And then actually, I think the calculations for the mass does still happen, by the way. I need to go check that. Okay, and the next thing will be another block, same block, but it will start over 100. So we start that, yeah. Okay, so let's take this away. So I can't move anything right now because take control. Is this is looking at object block data. Yeah, this is oh no, why am I not able to take control of this? Am I moving? Hold on. Oh, look at the tiny little no costume right there. So it's not. Oh, I am moving. What the heck? I'm moving inversed as well. I'm pressing right and it's moving left. Oh, duh, I'm moving the floor. That's what's happening. I'm the floor character right now because that's the first one that was created. I messed that up. Let me do this. There we go. Now I should, yeah, there we go. So the camera is not following that object. Link camera to object. Is camera bound to, it is, oh crap, it's bound to the, okay, I messed up something. This can't just be, well, okay, I won't, so, sorry. The camera links to the object you want to link it to, but it links to the game objects. And right now, none of these were game objects, so it has nothing to link to. So I could just add the first one to be, honestly, I could just add it to be the island again, I guess. I didn't really want to use island, but there we go. That should work out fine. Okay, so I'm the island again. So watch, when I move into this thing, boom, I just hit it. I'm not moving anymore, the block moved. I can hit it again, it moves, right? So it's applying the force, like it's switching forces, right? I just kind of pushed it. Now, when that happens in the physics engine, the second they intersect, if you wanted to, okay, so you look and you say, okay, it's touching this block. I wanted to know how hard it was moving into this block when it touched it. Well, if you look at the physics engine, you won't get that value. You'll get zeros in a lot of the spots because after it calculated that it's touching the block, it has zeroed out a lot of the velocities in whatever velocity it needs to do so that the physics looks appropriate, right? That's not good because you want to know how hard it hit. So this before collision is just basically all of this data is just one frame behind. So when you hit an object, whoops, I thought the object was still there. When you hit an object, right, you read this to know how fast it was going. It's just, it's convenient. It's so that you can know how hard you hit things or how fast it was when you touch, you know, stuff like that, right? I don't know what you could use it for, but that's also there. Or I know what you can use it for, but not everything, right? So there's, you guys can go wild with this. And there you go. I think that's it. One other thing I want to say was, if you were confused on how these lines were able to be drawn and not have those weird like line overlap things where you have you know how like the sprites can't actually go past the border in Scratch, like they just get stopped. Well, there is a trick to prevent this where you actually can get your sprite across the border. And before, I used to try to make a method where you do like some crazy math where you determine where the position of the block would be on the border based on where it was in the thing, but the math is so confusing, it was getting annoying. So instead I just made this where you have a blank and a big image, and the big image is size 30,000 by 30,000 pixels. So if you have any block that is beyond 30,000 pixels, then you'll start seeing it act weird, but that's only if you have it beyond 30,000. You can increase this how I did it. You just click on it. Oh crap, nope, let's undo that. Oh, I just turned it to bitmap. It just erased all of it. So you click on it, you have to move it away, but you click on it and you can scroll, or you can make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you move it back to the center. And that's why the image is this red into blue thing, so you can find the center. Because when you move this away, you can see, oh, it's getting darker and darker, so this goes to the middle of the red. At a certain point, it gets really hard to find it. If it's bigger, like 100,000, it's pretty hard to find the center, but you don't really need it to be the center. You just need a big block that allows you to do this. And I'll show you the block that actually is calculating it. It should be right here. So right here is in the tools spot, there's a go to, and you say go to X and Y, and let's say you had X is negative 500. Wow, that's convenient. I said 500 before looking at this. Well, this is not negative though. You go to 543 on the X, right? Well, it would stop you at 240 because the width is 240 and the negative 240 this way.
so 480 width. So what it does is it switches to the big object. It goes to that spot because it's under 30,000. And when a sprite is moving, so let's stop this. Well, I don't want to test it. I have to change all this up. If you have a sprite, it can move all the way until there's only 15 pixels left of the object, and it won't move any farther. So it will move. I think you get the idea. It switches to this thing. It goes really far out there. It turns into this really big thing, and then it switches to the smaller thing, and now the smaller thing, which is a size of 0, is now all the way out there where you want it to be. Anyway, so that's how I did it. And then I also have these variables here, the player X and the zoom, which just make the player camera move around. And if you have the zoom, I could make the zoom like 0.5. And now the whole thing is smaller. You can zoom out. You can make it 8. Well, actually, at a certain point, you can't go any farther because sprites can only get a certain size. So if I make this like a 10,000, it's still going to be that same size, I bet. Yeah, see? Same size, but a little bit weirder. Let's just go back to 1. So from things like 5 to 0 is basically your range of how big you can get an object to zoom into. So let's 0.1, super tiny, right? Yeah, so here's your super tiny game, super zoomed out. So anyway, so that's another thing. It's basically over at this point. There's not much that. Oh, it's having that weird bug. It's not much to add on to this. That was basically it. That was a very long video, I bet. But oh, and one other thing I should say is that if you are going to use this, so 2 things. If you want to use this, everything is stored in this guy right here. So you just export it and then import it into your project. Boom. And then you do everything in this, because if you go out of this, you do not have access to any of the blocks that are inside this, right? So if I click this, all the blocks pop up. Any other sprite would not have these blocks. So you have to do it all in here. The other thing is that when you are working with this, this is, if you want anything to happen before any of this stuff even gets set up, you run it here. Then there's this game reset thing. It resets everything that needs to be reset. Then it broadcasts the setup and it waits for that to be done. So here's the setup. This is where I added the objects to the scene. This is where you would set up everything for your game, all the variables you need that you want to have set up after you've created these guys, or anything you're gonna be created. That's gonna be created, and then after it's done with that, it runs the start, and then here's the start, and this is where you have all your game loop animation, so your if statements, your all those things, and there you go. Also, I should say, I just realized right as I was saying all this, it has nothing to do with this specifically, but for those objects that don't have a physics property, they just exist. So if I take this out, put this in, and then put these in. No, put these in. I believe this should all go back to how it was. It's very zoomed in. I set it to 2, didn't I? I don't know why I set it to 2. I set it to 1. There we go. So we're back to this thing, right? For this object, oh my god, I keep doing that. For some reason, Control S sometimes doesn't work on Scratch, and then it opens up the saving the HTML thing. So this object right here, because you can't touch it, and it's because it's not really existing in the physics engine, you could use it as a HUD object. So let's say you had, I could do this pretty simply by, that's the 3rd object, I think. Yeah, the 3rd object. And what I could do is I can go to the set, and I'm going to do 3, and I'm going to set it to, oh, I keep doing that, setting it to the data from the, okay, I'm going to have to do it in kind of a more, not tacky, but inside the engine way. So I go to the game objects, I look at player 1, let's find its X and Y is right here. So it's, man, this is going to be tricky. Actually, I'll just do it simply, but the way you would normally do it is you would do index item, actually I could do it right now, index item, then join, and you would have, you don't have to join it, but you would do this and 1, right, for player 1, and that's shown in the game objects. You see that should be 1, and then we add to that and we're trying to get the 12th and 13th item, so we do 11 and 12. Oops, 11 and 12. So this is that spot, and then we go back in here and get the item that is in that index, which I don't need this, I just copied this. And then we can see when I click this, it says negative 58,999, that's right here. And then we just set that to the X and Y like this. Well, it's gonna set right on our player. I want some offset. So what we could do is we can offset it by adding, and we can add, for the X, we'll add not 240, like 220 or 210 or 200. So it's gonna be pushed over to the right side over here, 200 from the center. And then we can also add a negative, I don't know, negative 100. So this should, in theory, be moving that invisible block. Oh, I gotta keep doing that. Invisible block. No, it's not. Hold up. Why is it not doing that? Set. All that work and it doesn't work. Why do I need to? Do I need to do it up here? Yeah. Okay. I guess the order matters. Whoa. Okay. Whoops. I guess it's the object too that I need to move. Oh, and then it's moving with the cameras. Okay. Interesting. I'll maybe add something, because I just realized it moves with the smoothness of the camera. And by the way, that smoothness is right here. So if I press this to 1, it's like linked perfectly. But if I put this to something like 0.01, it's gonna be super slow and moving to the spot where it's at. There's some good panning tricks though. You can pan to an object's position. See, like switch it to 3, then to 3, then back to 1. Let's do 0.4. Switch to 3. Switch to 2. Isn't that interesting? I just learned that right now about my own system. Anyway, so I'll look into all this stuff. But anyway, this is more of an update. You know, none of this whole video is supposed to be convenient or be able to follow. It's just for those who kind of understand it and it makes sense and they're looking forward to using this for their own projects. When I make that nice video, I will be putting a lot of effort into making it sound, you know, like very nice and understandable and all that stuff. I'm basically saying what I'm saying right now a lot because it will make me actually do it if I'm reliable for it. So yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoy. I hope you are very interested in this project. If you like this and you have like friends on Scratch, or you know you're part of a community on Scratch, or you know, I definitely share this around. I really want this to be something that's like super useful. I know there's a lot of people who have made similar things like this, in the sense that, you know, there's that one guy who made let's see, let me go to Explore. There was an outline thing. I forget if it's here still. Guy or girl, I don't know if it was what gender, but it was like a easy physics engine almost. And then there's Griffpatch, I think his name is Griffpatch. I have no idea. That's my messages. Why is there capital? Griffpatch. Yeah, it is Griffpatch. Okay, so this guy, if I can go to his page, why doesn't his page not pop up? I don't know how to search his page, but he has like real physics engines, like rotating physics engines that are really useful that you can use in your own thing. So people have done stuff like this, but I'm just trying to make it all one thing, all connected into one game engine, and it just works and it's nice and it's fun to use. So yeah. Anyway, so if you like this video, please like it, share, subscribe, even comment, all that stuff, typical YouTuber stuff. But no, it means a lot. I've gotten a pretty decent amount of comments asking about certain things in the certain videos that they were commenting on, and questions, and I just love answering them. It's so awesome. But yeah, definitely do that stuff. It would make my day, and I hope you enjoyed it.